Hi everybody, welcome to part 2 on the element of water and the water triplicity in astrology. The water triplicity, remember, is the 3 signs that fall under the element of water, which are Cancer, Scorpio and Pisces, and our 2 water planets, which are Moon and Neptune. Now, before I carry on, there are going to be several videos on water because it's a very complex element. So this is part 2. There are also, as we know, we have our axes, important axes and 4 important points on a natal chart that are also allocated elements. And the descendant is allocated the element of water. So the descendant is directly opposite your ascendant. Your ascendant is your rising sign, the sunrise point on your natal chart, where the sun was rising at the time you were born. That's your ascendant. That is the sunrise point. Directly opposite is the descendant, and the descendant is that's the sunset point on your chart, and that is allocated the element of water. And the scientific symbol for water is an upside down triangle. No line through it, just a plain upside down triangle. And it is seen as a moist, cold element. So even though it can be heated up, etc., it's basically seen as a moist, cold element. Now, think about, before we even look at how water affects us in our charts and that, we're still looking at how water functions in nature and the different forms of water, so that you can understand more deeply how it affects us in our astrological charts. So think about the different forms of water. We have water as a liquid, as a fluid. We have, if we freeze water, it becomes a solid and obviously colder. If you leave it alone, it will then return to room temperature and become a liquid again. It can also, you can boil it and it will become a gas. It will become steam. And if left again to cool down, it will return to room temperature. We have condensation in the water cycle as well. And we have evaporation. So water escapes easily. It changes form constantly and easily. Okay. Even if you leave a fluid in a container, it can sometimes escape through evaporation or through, have you ever left your cardboard cup of Coke or whatever it is, a liquid, on a counter for long enough, you'll see the water starts escaping. It gets through, it permeates, and it absorbs, and it gets through things. So just think, I want you to think about these different forms of water that you can get. And remember that each element has got a different form in astrology. And with Cancer, it's fluid, and it is the source of the river or the source of the spring. It does flow, but it's a slow flow. It's a trickle, or the source. Okay, and that is the form of water that Cancer represents. That is why it is often, because it is the source, it also ties into the sign of Cancer, ties very much into the mother, and it's ruled by the moon, which is also tied, that planet ties into feminine energy and the symbol of the mother, and it ties into the womb and dissolving boundaries between past and present, whether that's past lives and present life, or past and present in this life, in this incarnation. And then we have Scorpio, and Scorpio is frozen water. Okay, so it's much more solid. It can be a lot colder. It's ice. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean that a Scorpio person is a very cold person. it will depend on the chart. But the form of water that Scorpio represents is the iceberg or iceberg. And funny enough, think of an iceberg, you often only see, 9/10 of the iceberg is hidden. You see the tip of it, and then there's this 9/10 underneath the water that we are not seeing, or that is not immediately visible. And that is why Scorpios can be seen as cooler and more solid and more stable, okay, out of the water signs. They can also come across at times as very secretive or very, I can't see what's going on with you, okay, or difficult to express. Because you must remember, which we'll get to just now, water is all about emotions and feelings. And so because it's ice and the iceberg, it can be harder to express it sometimes. But it can also be more solid. It can also be more a more solid form of expression, okay, more lasting, okay. And then, and that is dissolving boundaries between life and death. Scorpio often ties into the boundaries between life and death. Because remember, in the first video, we talked about water is the universal solvent. So on an astrological level, on a physical level, it's dissolving things. But on an astrological and spiritual level, it's dissolving boundaries between different things, especially on an emotional, soul level, all of this, boundaries, okay. And then we have Pisces, which is vaporized. The form of water that Pisces is vaporized water. So that is swirling mists and fogs and clouds, okay, possibly even steam, but it is more mists, fogs, clouds. And that's dissolving, it often ties into dissolving the mortal boundaries between man and God, and that is why Pisces is often linked into, and remember, it's out in the winter quadrant, many to many, and it is often linked into, Pisces is often linked into religions and organized religions or large religious groups, religious beliefs. So it's dissolving the boundaries between man and God or man and spirit then. Okay. So there we have the different forms of water that we come across in astrology. Water is the element of the soul and of emotion and of feelings. The main desire is the desire to feel and the desire to express emotions. And there is a very strong drive with the water element of the desire for, and the drive for security and for survival. And so a lot of what ties into the water element is emotional, feelings, survival, and security. And we will go into more about all of this in part 3.